Hi guys, this is a topic that I think really deserves some consideration. Some of the times, and you'll see this on quite a few of the forums, where you might think you might have a hard time differentiating whether this person is on the ASD spectrum, autism spectrum disorder, or is a covert narcissist. And it's really interesting because Sam Vaknin, he's a self-aware narcissist, a scientist, super smart guy. He talks a little bit about this because some theorists believe that actually ASD or narcissism should actually be on the same spectrum. And I think that is an interesting consideration. But on the exterior, they can look very similar because you have some very similar characteristics that they share. They both have either low or no empathy, right? They have an impairment of the empathy. Some of the latest research on ASD is indicating that it's not that they don't have empathy, it's that they cannot express the empathy. They don't know how to express it in verbally or in any other way, right? So maybe people that have ASD actually have they may be very empathetic, but unable to show that empathy to other humans. So it appears that they don't have empathy. Now that is, again, just some of the research, and I don't think it's really totally determined, but there's a problem with empathy. With narcissists, it's just totally an impairment of the empathy, or none at all. They just cannot emotionally empathize with other human beings, right? So there's an empathy impairment. There's a communication issue with both narcissists and people on the spectrum, the ASD spectrum. I believe that some of the communication issue with narcissists is because they are highly manipulative and they don't want to understand. They're not seeking to understand. They're not seeking for partnership. They're not seeking for any sort of resolution or understanding of somebody else's point of view, right? With ASD, I think it's that they just don't understand. They cannot put themselves, like, it's very difficult for them to understand another person's point of view. It's not a choice. It's like sort of from what I understand, it's sort of a neurological issue more with the ASD. But some very specific differences, and there's a lot of similarities. There's intimacy issues with both. With the narcissist, usually the intimacy issues are because they have a hidden sex life, porn addiction, or infidelity. With ASD, it's that they really have a hard time with intimacy because it's a sensory perceptual issue for them, or it could even be olfactory. Like it's more of a to do with their brain and how it's processing, smells and tactile stimuli, right? And also, well, there's other reasons for it too, but there's definitely an intimacy issue. And then both have a hard time expressing emotional intimacy. They both are very shut down in terms of being able to express themselves or what's going on in their internal life, their feelings, etc., with another person. And then identifying feelings is very hard for people with ASD, like actually being able to say, oh, I'm sad right now. I'm sad. I'm feeling sad. With a narcissist, a lot of it with the narcissist is they don't really have much feeling, right? So there's they're muted. And a sociopath, like they don't have feelings. So it's that they just don't even have it. It's not that they can't express it. They don't have the feelings, right? So, some of the main differences are usually people that have ASD are not manipulators and they are not pathological liars. In fact, they're sort of known for being bluntly honest. So a lot of times, they'll have problems in communication because they're so honest about, if you say, does this dress make me look fat? And they're like, yeah, it does. Yes, it does. And they're going to give you a very straightforward answer, usually, right? And then also with ASD, they're not chameleons. They do not pick up on, typically, they don't pick up on somebody else's personality and literally like become that other person. They're pretty uniquely quirky, and usually they're sort of, they don't do the same thing as the mirroring. Although I have read a couple of articles that if ASDs are trying to pretend to be normal, maybe they do sometimes copy other people's behaviors. So that's sort of, the jury's still out on that. But in general, they are not master manipulators. They are not good liars. and they usually just send themselves to relationships. They're not able to be like these high-level chameleons that you will see with narcissism and sociopathology and psychopaths, right? So those are a few of the things. And then in terms of infidelity, usually people that are ASD are actually quite loyal, and they're usually unlikely to engage in infidelity, although there of course are exceptions to that, and I've read, quite a few of those exceptions. But in general, they're not master manipulators. They're not vengeful. They're not malignant. People, not that people on the ASD spectrum couldn't have some of those issues at times. Of course they could. But in general, those are some of the differences. So they're not master manipulators. So if you're being manipulated, you're probably dealing with a narcissist. But again, the covert narcissist and Asperger's spectrum disorder, or autism spectrum disorder, they can kind of look very similar on the outside. Obviously, it would require a full clinical diagnosis from a licensed professional psychologist in order to determine which category the person that you're dealing with is falling into. If they have ASD, they're more likely to go and seek that diagnosis, or if somebody recommends it to them, they're more likely to go and get a diagnosis. If you're working with somebody who is narcissist or sociopath or psychopath, they're very unlikely to allow a diagnosis. Very few of them even want to do